Good morning, everyone. It's Tuesday. The Explicit Measured Podcast is back with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
I gotta think of a saying. That's so good.
Happy
Tuesday, guys.
You can't take Seth's Happy
I'm not
Tuesday.
gonna take it. I don't have my own slang, my own little phrase.
I will say this. I'll bring this up. So my mom has been watching the podcast a little bit more now, and so she has learned that Tommy's mom is also Italian. And she's like,
gosh.
"Oh, it's the Italian mom." So I was like, "Yeah." Tommy talks. He's like ma, like an Italian would, ma. And she thought that was really funny. She was like, "Yeah, I like listening to the intro of the podcast because after you guys start talking about like technical stuff, I don't understand what's happening. But sometimes you talk about life in the beginning, and that's interesting." I was like, "Okay, interesting." So, anyways, I just want to bring that up. Hello, Mom.
Yes.
Thanks for watching.
You got
Yes.
Hey,
you
Mike's
got
mom.
the fan club going.
Yep.
Yes.
Hello.
Mike,
Hi,
you got
hi,
those
Mrs. Garlow.
t-shirts. You got those
Yeah.
t-shirts yet?
Yes, exactly. Hey,
Listen,
Explicit Measures mom.
yeah.
I've had more than one conversation with my mother going, "Mom, don't comment on YouTube. Just talk to me." Separate churches kind of
Text me while it's going.
And then yes, it's because I have the very Brooklyn typical Italian mother words, like the son is just and the kids are just kind of like, I thought I was gonna have more dates in high school based on what my mother and my grandmother said when I was because like at 5 years old, you're like, like, oh, you're so you're like, oh wow, okay, and then
I'm
nothing,
handsome.
nothing. What a disappointment. So yeah, I had the full experience with that.
This may be a good or bad dad moment, but my kids have been begging me to buy them the sweatshirts. So I have the sweatshirts from the store, and so they've been wanting to pick out their own Power BI, the Jack Daniels logo sweatshirt, and so they want it so bad, and so I bought them all a sweatshirt, and then yesterday I believe they all wore it to school, and all their friends are like, "That's a cool shirt. Where'd you get that?" And they're like,
Oh
my
gosh.
dad has a
My dad.
website."
Right? Like so you messed up because you should have sent them with like handouts,
Yeah.
cards, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you want one too? Here.
Yeah.
Here.
Go to
They
the
can
site.
be your little
Mhm.
promotion factory, man.
I was gonna
Marketing
say,
at its best.
I
That
thought
was
the
funny.
bad dad moment was you
Awesome.
can get one, but you got to earn it. Build a data model and come back to me.
I need 3 reports out of your son before you
Yeah,
get another
I need a
shirt.
blog post.
Yeah, now we're talking.
That's it's just promoting young youth, man.
Gil RV's
right.
daughter's doing posts now on Data
Is she
Chant.
really? Is she
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, one of the most fun presentations I was ever at, and I forget whose speaker child it was, but they brought them to a SQL Saturday.
Oh, really?
And they did a presentation, and it was absolutely phenomenal. Like, because and the audience, right? They're just riveted anyway. But as a little kid to have that opportunity, and she was phenomenal. Just It was teaching your kid how to publicly speak at a young age.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Amazing stuff.
I'm trying to figure out how to tell like a 5-year-old what data is.
Yeah.
So like, because like she'll come down when
Yeah.
I'm in the basement. She goes, "What's that?" I'm like, "Oh, that's I'm doing reports and that's all data." And she's obviously not going, "Oh, data, okay." So I'm like, I was like,
Yeah,
it's,
you gotta
how
explain
you
it.
do things every day. Well, I count that. I'm like, I don't know if you know some of the things that just
Daddy
said.
does counting every day. You go to school and learn algebra, but Daddy does counting.
You know what you should do is take their piggy bank and break it up into cents, 5 cents, quarter, dollar, whatever, like as the increments.
Oh,
right?
I like it.
And then make a little savings dashboard.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that when they buy something too, you can see this bar.
Yeah.
Like, now you have no money.
I was thinking of doing one like, here's when Daddy's gotten angry at you during the week, and Saturdays seem to be the highest. I like yours. I like yours a lot better.
So I'll also say this. I mean, my kids are a little bit older than your kids. I think my eldest is 11, and I think you guys are still in the younger ages. But they're going to learn stuff at school, and they're going to come ask you questions, and it's going to be good questions. Yesterday, my son drew me a picture of synapses in the brain and said, I was in school the other day, and I learned that all these little connections are made inside your brain for things, and the connections that are made are how you remember things. They're how you remember pictures, how you remember smells. And I was like, wow. Okay, I didn't think I was gonna have this conversation, but basically we're talking like computer science now, and I'm like, I gotta tell them like, okay, your brains are like a bunch of transistors, and it's like a computer, and it's storing lots of ones and zeros in your head, and like, I think that's kind of how computers are modeled after, like the similar idea. So I had to like Google some stuff, figure out like what's going on here, like how do I? I mean, the teacher was on. He learned some interesting stuff. I'm just trying to like make it like a real world example, kind of like, yeah, that's kind of how it works. It's kind of incredible. So, anyways, you'll
Yeah,
get some
you're
really interesting questions in the future, I'm sure.
Dad, I know what synapses are. Good. Start building.
Yeah, exactly. I need 2 pipelines, a couple data sets.
Yeah, you replied, that's why they called it synapse.
Yeah, I need 3 or 4 triggers in there. Can you just get that to happen? Thanks.
Start them early.
Amazing. All right, well, let's
our kids are gonna be so messed up.
Oh boy. they're gonna be picked on.
The goal of parenting. Try not to mess them up.
They're gonna be picked on. They're gonna be
Kids
picked
think
on
you're good.
at this age, but they'll eventually be someone's boss later on. So hopefully that's how it will work out.
That's hilarious.
Anyways, so moving on to our topic for today. So today's our topic around reviewing goals in PowerBI.com. So there's a feature set called goals. Tommy, just give a quick run through for those of you who don't know what goals are or have not used them. Maybe give us a quick run through on like what are goals.
Yeah. So if you haven't heard the news released at MBAS 2021, Power BI basically released something they called goals in the service. And what it basically allows organizations, teams, users to do is basically create scorecards. And what the dynamic feature is you can actually connect to a data point in any report that you have access to. For a actual number and a target number. And you can set a few things around that.
Mm-hmm.
Basically have these scorecards that basically say, I want to connect to this data card that has this number or this line chart. And I want to track it, either I can set a manual number or I can set another dynamic number based on a completely separate report. It really works on tables. Any visual I've tested, it works, and you can pick any data point on there. So that allows you to track that. And what Power BI does, which is one of the really neatest features, it will, again, as your report refreshes, it will track it and basically do check-ins. So then you can see the trending on that to see how that's done over time.
Mm-hmm.
We did have a conversation about this in one of our first episodes, just because of something that we thought was huge. The first time I think I ever mentioned a game changer that we thought for the service. Power BI in the last few weeks has actually come out with a few announcements that they've been finally made some enhancements to it. For one, and I think this is one of the biggest ones, is you can actually view goals in your mobile applications. So on iOS and Android, which is huge to basically, again, see that high level view. Again, these data points can come from multiple reports, which allows kind of having that scorecard of all the high level goals. And also you can have statuses around each goal, which basically says, like, is it on track? Is it behind? Before that was all manual, but now you can basically say if the data point is this % to the target or above this actual number, and the date is after October 1st, then make it on track or else put it behind. So it allows that easily view your goals and what's most important, what is needs to be flagged. So huge feature, but that's kind of the basis overview that what goals are in the service. It is only available, I believe, just for premium per user and premium gen or for the premium. So unless you have a pro license, but PPU.
So it's a good overview of goals, and I think they're starting to enhance them some more. This is one of the topics we talked about earlier. That's kind of like it came out. It seems like it's a good starting point, but it needs some additional feature sets to become really impactful and to drive adoption. So it looks like they're continually investing in things. I'm actually pulled up the 3 articles. There's now it just recently released last month was an automated status rules. So you can have a goal defined, and I will update its status based on the goals and information in those goals. And then you now have some better filtering ability. So there's up at the top of the left of the screen, there's like cards or KPIs that are kind of talking like these are the goals that are on track, are they're on status, or they're out of status, or they're blocked, or whatever the goals may be that at the top part of the goals. You can now click on those, and it'll actually let you filter the goals by those groupings at the top, which I think are very helpful as well. So What do you think about the new features, Tommy? Have you played with the new ones
Yeah.
with the filtering and the status rules?
Yeah, so I one was just excited to see some news on goals since we really haven't seen anything since May.
Sure.
Just because I think goals is one of the more important things that's come out of Power BI in maybe the last year.
Really?
And I really believe that for what it can be, not necessarily what it is right now,
Pretty
but
bold.
what it can be. No, I mean, this is something we've had conversations about in spades in terms of what is lacking for a user, like what's that last hurdle, so to speak. And it's that ability, we have 100 data points and a bunch of visuals and
Sure.
10 reports that at minimum that you view or need to view. So what's important? And to be able to centralize that and to keep your data models and not have build one bloated report, but keep these scorecards, so to speak, that allow that high level view and then be able to drill in. Mike, you said this when goals came out. You're like, this is the true dashboard.
Yeah, it is. When I look at like stuff that Seth and I have built from a dashboarding standpoint, there are multiple models that service a common KPIs that you need to have. And I think this is just a very core, neat feature, right? I can have any data from any model anywhere, and I collectively grab those things and pull them together with some sort of, data in and of itself is not, I think, as actionable unless we have some sort of metric to get to where we're trying to go. And I think this helps us, or helps organizations, to pluck things out of these reports and put in front of people an area where we have a clear number where we're at, and we have a direction of where we're trying to go. And so that's one thing I'm very big on, particularly when we build dashboards, is this position and direction portion, which is something that I learned from the Delta Associates. So highly recommend that course, but I use it all the time. And this is one of those cases where the goal defines our position, where are we at right now? And then there is a metered destination. I want to get this number of sales. I want to have this number of successes in my pipeline, whatever that number is. There's a metered number of something that says we're succeeding or we're not succeeding.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have you heard in training or documentation or just in one of the slang words is snapshot? Like, we need a snapshot of our data, right?
Yep.
And I think goals can very well serve that purpose because, again, it's a centralized location. It's not like, oh, go to this Power BI app and then this report and you'll get those two numbers. You can have those two numbers in a sense, one scorecard. Yeah. It's really, again, centralizes the most important data, and also will introduce people to what's going on if they're overwhelmed. For the updates that came out, the filtering and the status is good. I still think it's one of those things where it's almost like a round peg in a square hole.
Okay.
I feel like with the statuses, because I don't know if people are using the statuses that way. So basically the only things that you can do automated statuses right now is if the number is above us, if the actual number is above a number that you enter, or it's percentage to the target.
Yeah.
Right. And then you can combine that with the date, say, and it's October 1st.
Sure.
Well, that's a little difficult to do unless you have like a forecast in there too. So let's say take an example. Let's say you're tracking your sales for the year 2021 and your number is to get to 10 million, you're at 7 million.
Yeah.
So unless you have a very clear targeted plan within the organization already that for every quarter where we should be, it's kind of difficult to say like that number should be, what should it be in November 1st?
Yes.
Unless what I would love is you'd be able to actually combine the status with maybe another metric. Like, because we always have like our actual and then like our projected number, projected to forecast. That's what I would want the status to be based on. So, but instead you have to create another scorecard. Anyways.
Sure.
Well, I mean, let me ask you guys, because we're trying to begin to roll things out with goals slowly in our organization. But where are you guys at since it came out? Have you used it? Is it something that you're either using yourself personally or something you're even using in your organization?
Seth, maybe you should jump on that one. Are you using goals initially?
Not yet. I think there's an opportunity in 2022.
I know, right? It's going by fast.
Yeah. My life.
Yeah, right.
um 2022. I mean, with the way where I see goals are the big kind of big lifts you're doing in a quarter or something like that that I want to track with a team.
Yeah.
Um so no, I'm still interested in seeing some of hopefully some new features within them that help kind of push me over the edge to make it 100%. Like, this is what I want to use, right? Some of the there's still just some existing challenges. I don't know if we want to get into that yet, but like, ultimately, I like the fact that, I agree it could be the very useful dashboard
Mhm.
where we're tracking against certain things. And I can dictate or alter some of those goals and edit them and keep notes on them, etc. So it's a useful thing, but at the same time, I don't have some of the customization of them that I do have in a dashboard,
Yeah.
right? Like the high level KPI card, like, counts. Like, it's great that we're doing by status and we're doing these things, but some of the challenges I see are, I have a goal and sub goals. In my mind, sub goals are not goals. They're a byproduct of the final metric, and that's the thing I want to count overall. So if you're going to aggregate or roll up, my statuses and show me kind of like, if I have 4 sub goals, I don't want to see 5 goals. I want to see 1 goal, and then my 4 sub goals is a different KPI, or it's the mix of where those are at in status realm, and let me build rules on those, right? Because those are like sub objectives that have to be accomplished before my overall long-term goal is completed.
Yeah.
So I just don't see some of that tracking kind of thing, which forces you into manual, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to be manually tracking things in this setup.
So, Tommy, one of the initial kind of maybe grievances or things that I was looking for right out of the gate on this feature was you can set a target, and you're able to, because you have a goal, right? I'm going to improve my click through rate on my website from 4% to 6%, whatever the click through rate is on your website, whatever that may be. There was this idea of the target can change. So if I'm looking like over time, the target could be 6%, but then we meet that objective and we want to change it again up to 10%, something else that we're stretching ourselves on a goal or whatever that may be. Does the tool track your changes in those goals? I still don't think it does.
It only tracks the actual still.
Only tracks the actual. Okay.
Yeah. So it'll show it trending, especially if the data refreshes. It'll basically plot a data point every time the data changes for the actuals. But the target number does not show that historical.
Okay.
That
was one of my areas that I was like, I think, in my opinion here, especially when you're talking like, so I worked in a number of sales organizations where we had teams that were trying to figure out sales. And this is actually when I was working at Johnson Controls for batteries. I guess I can say the company. So at the time, it's not Clarios that they have since spin off the company, but we were doing a lot of working with who's the client, how many battery sales are we going to be getting, what's the quota numbers look like, right? So you start talking sales numbers. Those numbers, if someone met their goal earlier in the quarter because a large sale came through, they don't just say, yeah, pat you in the back, nice job, move on. They change your goal. They add more. They add, okay, you made whatever $1.2 million in sales. Okay, we're going to now stretch it to 2. I think you can get that now. Keep going. They don't want you to stop if you make a good sale in the beginning of your sales cycle. So that, I mean, there's things like that I think would be relevant here. And I think I'm going to dovetail a little bit a thought here on Seth's point as well. Seth, you were saying like, we're already managing and tracking things. I think this is another, maybe not a pain point, but something that I have to be more intentional about using. I, for one, I'm not using this. I'm not seeing organizations that I'm working for or helping them consult on. They're not using this either. So they're not asking me about it. They're not trying to put it in places. They haven't shown me anything they've built. So I think right now this feature is widely unused from my understanding. There's probably some organizations who understand it. However, what I would say is the goal is a good idea. There is a little level of overhead that comes with adding goals into your process. And so right now, if I think about like the additional overhead, like where our time is valuable, we've all 3 of us, like seriously, every day we're like, oh, I'm so busy, time's flying by, it's crazy. I I'm constantly doing things in other tools, such as like a Jira or DevOps, or I'm managing workloads or work goals and objectives in other tools. So in order for me to bring that information or insights into my mobile device or my Power BI mobile, my goals on my phone, right? I need to
There are
think
no
about,
goals
okay,
on your phone.
I thought you
There
could.
is now.
There is now.
There's goals on.
There
yeah,
is now.
that just got.
That just got released.
Okay.
So that was like one of the newer things they just
That was
added.
Yeah.
So that was
Okay.
another last month release was you can now get goals on your mobile device, right? So I think it's a win.
Actually, a pretty cool experience.
But I mean, as I think about it, going like, this is one more thing I now have to manage. This is one more thing I have to be intentional about building the data models beforehand to make sure that I can use them in the goals area. So I think if you're
Yeah.
already heavily leveraged and a lot of your reporting is already coming out of Power BI, like you have Jira, you're already bringing in all the data in a Power BI report, and you've got it there, then I think goals is in a good logical next step to get you into this next arena. But if there's a lot of other tools that you're not bringing data into for Power BI, now I'm thinking like, okay, I have to now
Multiple
be intentional
platforms.
about building a model, getting the data in, getting on a refresh cycle, and then I can start thinking about goals. I think goals will be better when you have more organizations broadly adopting Power BI, and you can kind of pick and choose a couple things from there. I'd be curious. So if you're chatting on the chat, if anyone is on any of the social media
Well-
channels, please let us know. Are you using it? Are you finding value from it?
Yeah.
Give us a heads up.
So a few points there, Mike. I want to reply to. One, you can create a scorecard, the Power BI goal and a scorecard, and not connect to any Power BI data.
True. Yeah, it's very true.
So you could technically, I mean, not that that's the best solution, but if you were to have, like, let's say you had
Yes.
some project things from a report, but you also want to track your, things that are in a sense manual as it is already,
Mm-hmm.
that you don't have a connection to, you can do the check-in and the target numbers, and you basically have someone assigned to that too.
Well,
So
how-
that is,
I'm gonna jump on your comments.
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
Right. I like that. So that the fact that I don't have to have a data model set up for that. But then I would also go back to my argument of now I'm just adding more overhead, and does everyone understand how to enter? So to your point, Tommy,
yeah.
there's supposed to be some training or some process around this to get
Well-
people to kind of like jump in and track their goals or update their numbers per what their area is, right? So now I'm adding
Shouldn't
more
they
overhead.
anyways? Shouldn't they have somewhere anyways that I mean, this goes our conversation. We talked about insights and goals.
Yep.
We're, like I said, what we're trying to do now is we're trying to combine, in a sense, the goal feature with a kind of a culture change within the organization of getting people to think about before they request a report, as they show me sales. It's okay, what's the objective? Do you have any target numbers? What are the things that are going to
Yeah.
influence it, and build that way to kind of have a little synergy, not so we can use goals, but to use these features to get people thinking a different way. But your biggest complaint, I think mine too right now, is the inability to track the target number historically.
Oh, yeah.
I still feel though, if
Yep.
let's say Microsoft, Will Thompson is on this call and he's like, okay, release it tomorrow. He's like, we'll get them. And the article comes out tomorrow that historical trending is added, and you can see it day by day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you're still going to be using goals yet.
Mm-mm.
So,
I agree
and
with
that's what so let me ask that, if you had, I don't know if it's a feature thing is it a feature issue or is it something else? Is it a framework issue?
So I'm gonna fall back here a little bit. I mean, the fact that I'm just having arbitrary data points that are added in with some interesting visualizations on top of it feels to me like it's a SharePoint list at this point, right? It's just a list of things that
Here
are
we go.
Uh-huh.
There we go.
You are buying for
I
that
know.
MVP, aren't you?
Wow. Yeah.
SharePoint number 2.
I'm saying-
SharePoint.tips.
Yep. SharePoint.tips. Love it. So, I mean, it is just a list at that point. The data is just going somewhere. So, yeah, another Oliver is commenting on, we're trying to respond back to him. Oliver's saying organizations are not asking about it. He's not seen them integrate it. And it says that there's some lacking features from his side as well. So I'm actually asking the question on LinkedIn to see what are the features that he feels are missing.
So let me pop in. There are a couple key things I think that are missing when we're talking about goals, at least from my perspective. I'm going to key on what Mike said.
Yeah.
We're data people, and the vast majority of end users, I think, are now getting saturated with just data, and they still need to figure things out. And one of the things that is recently a repetitive theme that I'm hearing in many parts of my organization or other organizations, or what even Mike said, is I need to be able to like create a data point that says I did a bunch of stuff right here, and I want to see that in a visual form, because it's what happens after this point to which I know something is happening good or bad, right? Like what is the thing, or what is the change after this point,
Mhm.
right? So one of the things with goals here is, like, if my goal is to, like a sales guy, hit $1 million a year, and I did that in the first quarter, well, there's a data point change that I need to see, that is like, right here is when my goal changed from 1 million to 3 million,
Mhm.
right? So throughout the year, as I'm tracking whatever goal it is, I have these key metrics that are within, goals, to understand as the data is changing over time, especially where goals are good at, right? Like track a metric or something over time. Here are the key things that, as a manager, as somebody else who's reviewing goals with somebody, I can say, yeah, man, it's not just notes that we have to infer over the top of logic. It's I'm allowed to create a data point that is an inflection or a key
Mhm.
moment in this goal that is above and beyond just a note. And the challenge here is, like, this would be a perfect opportunity. You have a manual piece or a manual entry that allows us to, like, understand things on a notes level, which is why this is important. But I think there's a missing element here of, like, there needs to be an admin level or an agreed upon thing with a manager that says, we created this goal in January 1, and on February 15th we modified it by adding this inflection, right?
Mhm.
And saying, now your new goal is this. And I think, like, that change from those points in time is really important in a lot of reporting. And I think this is, like, one of those things that is missing there. I also think there's just an admin level interface here that is also missing, I guess, from my perspective.
Mhm.
Because if I'm managing people and I'm going to roll goals out throughout a team, let alone an organization, like, that's a planning doc. Like that's straight up in Excel. If these are, you know, I'm going to set current goals and targets, and, like, lay out, like, where my sales team has to be by the end of the year. Like, I'm going to have a full spreadsheet of what my expectations are for, like, medium, large team.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to have to manually create all that in Power BI. And then what if one of those things changes, or
Mhm.
something in the business changes? I need to go modify all the goals for the team. Like, now it's a very manual process, and it becomes less useful, right?
Mhm.
And that's where I'm like, okay, well, where's my interface that just rolls up all my goals
Right.
into like line items that I, the admin or the owner of all these goals, can go in and adjust, or, make these alterations of add key points, do these things. Because, like, ultimately, to Mike's point again, the more manual this is, the
Yeah.
less it's going to get used.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Which is why I would say the useful use cases for this are likely in sales and marketing, right?
Yep.
Where you have trackable things like,
Yes.
what is site traffic? What are your sales numbers that we're pulling out of the source system? I have a report that all my goals are tied specifically into, and these goals are, like, just by user. How much money are you making? Like, how much are you bringing in? Like, very applicable. Like, makes a ton of sense to use this versus just a dashboard KPI, because it has that extra element of, you're the person. Like, no support for row level security is still like meh,
Mhm.
like that makes it a little more painful.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, it's those areas that I think are very useful right now. But in others, I don't see, like, a super wide adoption if I don't have a way to manage it more effectively, rather than, like, on a one by one basis.
That's a really
Yeah,
good point. I like that.
I do too. So let me jump in here real quick, because I think there's two major things that you talked about, Seth, that I really want to touch on. The first is like the manual entry right now, or to create a scorecard. Let's say it's easy to create like a general goal number, but let's say you got to create one for each sales team, and you got 11 of them, or for each of these sub departments, there's no way to bulk do that. Like in a table, you have to create each one individually, the target and the goal. And like you said, if it were to change and like the target number was changed, you have to go into each one. So that idea is pretty difficult. But I think the bigger underlying thing to me, I honestly, with us, with what I think you guys are saying, even if we were to add these features, I still don't think the adoption would all of a sudden have this high increase in usage, mainly for the reason that goals is not just a feature that can be used, but it's kind of like almost like a methodology or approach that companies would have to think about and then adapt to for their goals.
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest thing right now. There's really only one. It's almost like you were to create a service desk, but you could only use one template. You couldn't customize, like you're only using a help desk when you really need a project plan.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I kind of see where it fits, because it's almost like they created the goals, how they do goals at Microsoft, but they never asked any other companies and partners like, hey, how do you guys use, like, what is your goal, approach? And to me, that's where it is like, not only do you have to get people to use it, I don't think a lot of companies have the exact same framework with the target and the actual, so to speak, in the framework that they build around goals.
So I explicitly called out Chris Wagner from Rockwell Automation. He's very vocal about they use Microsoft Power BI heavily, and there have been a number of examples coming out of Microsoft about Rockwell and how integrated they are. So I pinged him directly and said, Chris, are you guys using goals? You're a very large organization. Have you found value from it? Are you leveraging it? But that aside, I'll go right back to Seth's point. I think automation of injection of data. So there's kind of multiple users here, right? There's users that are the business user side, where I'm okay clicking on things. I'm kind of okay manually updating and tracking some things that are important to me. Then there's this next layer of, how do I get larger support for this long term, right? And I think automation of goals in or out, or be able to read those goals in or out with APIs or API access, while that's not the silver bullet, that's not the silver feature that's going to be like, oh yeah, add that one feature, everyone's going to use it then. I do think, though, for heavier developers like Tommy, Seth, myself, right, if we're talking about things like this, I think heavier developers with more deeply integrated parts to the organization, it needs a level of automation that can be there. An API, an Excel sheet dump, something I can go in and just quickly see what's going on there, and it just knows how to read it and ingest the information automatically for me. So I think those are the things that are, I think those are features that I would like to see. Mm-hmm. But again, I don't know how, I don't think this is going to be like I go to PowerBI.com and first thing I go to is goals all the time. I just don't feel like it's there yet.
Because again, it's good. This works perfectly for one type of goal, but not for others, if that makes sense. So like if you had a corporate goal to say, let's say we want to increase, the number of products created by 25% year over year.
Yep.
Then this works, right?
Yep.
Kind of thing, because then you just have a 25% and you just create a measure and a data card or a trending, and that's something you can track easily. You're still lacking some things, because you're still lacking, like, again, like where either forecast projections or like kind of underlying things, but that's something that's easily from an executive level or on your mobile app or some of these, like, that would be important to them to say, are we on track, where they don't have to find that report. But again, that's kind of the one size.
Yeah.
That it fits, and it doesn't allow for that customization, which to me, again, they could add all these features we've talked about, but they could add the admin automation, like the goal visual that they're going to come out with, where that would automatically create a goal, the tracking of the historical target. Mm-hmm. I still don't think this is in the current iteration going to be something that is going to be one of the most talked about features. I honestly think there's been 4 blog articles since May that I've seen of writing about goals.
I think the thing I'll point out is this, and like the goals could be an iterative step towards the final solution. We just don't know what that is too, right? So it's not like I'm saying I'm done with goals, but I think about the efforts that I just went through in my organization and my team to right size how the conveying of data is done. Right. So we use Jira extensively, right? I don't think many people know how to use Jira in the way Jira is designed,
That's true.
because I had to revamp how I set up things so that I can manage down, which is the daily, like every single task, work item, etc. How does that lay out? I'm not a project manager, right? So if you're listening to this and I'm gonna say something dumb, like, yeah, sorry. But like the fact of the matter is like that tool in some way, shape, or form is designed, even in my scenario where my team crosses many different projects,
Mhm.
to allow for me to enter data on a granular level, see it in dashboards that I can manage my team, and roll it up to a higher level in multiple different ways for leadership. So I'm managing up and down in a tool. If goals is supposed to be something that is going to be rolled across the organization, right? I see right now, okay, do I have the means to put in the granular information I need to in my team? And we're talking about that like here. But one of the users on YouTube, Joe, made a point, like, goals is workspace dependent. Like, I'm bound now to just a workspace or a team. If goals is supposed to be organizational, I don't see yet an element where the goals across these teams or the goals across these workspaces roll up to larger organizational goals, right? Because everything like if you have a goal, which is a quarter or half year or yearly goal, whatever the case may be, it may be siloed to your team, but it certainly should be tied to a higher level number, right? I think there's a significant story in there for consultants or for anybody else utilizing goals to basically have that roll up of, okay, you have an organizational goal. Now your teams in their workspaces can go build these goals. Here's the thing they tie into, so that as they're building it, here's the hierarchy and the structure where all that works. And all that downstream work, even if it's manual, is worthwhile because it filters into the organizational level where your leadership is like, we're on track or we're not on track. I need to go talk to Tommy because his stuff is in red. Hey, Tommy, why is your stuff in red? Right? Like, that makes sense to me. That makes the manual effort of putting in the grain of wherever, because you have a platform that's automatically rolling that up into leadership where they can understand on a high level whether or not you're on target or off target. That's the whole point of goals, right? So that's where I'm seeing the gaps, right? Like, you would need something that spans these different areas and allow developers to be able to build something like that, where you'd get that roll up and roll down kind of feeling, or the data starts to cycle. Then it's worth any pain or manual effort of not having everything completely tied into reports for goal tracking or something like that. But like right now, I don't see your adoption is going to be super high unless you're like your team is just, you want to manage it that way.
Let me ask this question: is there, and I don't know goals that well as I should, is there the ability for a goal to notify people? Is there an alerting piece that comes out of goals?
So with I've never tried it with the check-in, but if what you can do is basically at any point check in, so to speak. And you can't mention anyone. You can include a note. Let me see if I can actually mention.
And the reason here's where I'm thinking, like, okay, how do I start driving adoption, right? Adoption starts happening where, like, Seth or Tommy within an organization says, this is something that we're going to commit to, or we're going to experiment or work on this. And there has to be something that's triggering a user.
There's no automation.
Okay. So I feel like there has to be something that says, that pulls me into the goals area, right? So couple things that Seth, I think, is really, you pointed on there were a really good point, Seth, is I need the ability to be able to have a user notified about what their goals are, right? I think a miss here potentially is there's no level of security on goals. So everyone gets to see all the goals no matter what, and you're just making multiple areas to kind of segment them by groups. So I think there's definitely a play here for, we need real level security inside goals. That way when I make goals for my entire development team, each person can log in and see their goals. Additionally, it would be nice to have notifications around, if I'm tracking, if the expectation to my team is everyone's logging their hours every day, and we expect you to be around 8 hours or 6 hours of work throughout the day, what is alerting you to come back and grab and put that information into the goals area, right? I'm fine building a process around it, but help me automate more of it. Help me make it just be kind of part of the process where people just, I set it up. I set when my alert is happening or when my notification gets sent out. Those people are automatically notified, and then they get a link, goes and it draws you right back into goals. I'm a big proponent of kind of like making it easy for people to integrate with it. And I think one of those easy things to do is set reminders, set whatever those things are.
And especially, I think a lot of this too, we're talking, it's not just about the Power BI admin or the IT to create the scorecard, but we're talking about giving more, because the point of this too is to give responsibility to different team members. If you're to have this marketing report, where you could set like, you need to sign in or update your number by next, like weekly, and send a notification saying, hey, Mike hasn't updated. Mike, you need to update your number by Wednesday the 5th, kind of thing. And two, integrated with the rest of the product, like put on Power BI Home. I know it goes in Power BI apps now, but really is still its real separate entity, so to speak. But well, let me ask you guys this: do you guys want to go through a scenario, or I think this has been really good on the feature side of things. Let me see what direction you guys want to go.
Well, I think I'm going to comment on some of the things. I think some people are commenting on YouTube. I think Greg is talking about reading a book, Measure What Matters. I think that was Seth that you had said you read a book, Measure What Matters, or that if nothing else, it's a recommendation. So read that, because it sounds like it's about setting goals in organizationals and making sure that those goals are making sense to the organization, which I think was a really good comment. I think Joe is talking about here. Yeah, he was saying something about, so Joe, I think, was also jumping in here around that concept of people use Excel a lot to track their goals currently. So like if we think about like that medium, what is being used today, I definitely think that's a valid statement. There's a common Excel sheet. I've done this before. I've worked with companies that do this now. There's a common Excel sheet. We go there and we enter in cell values into a tracker that then gets rolled up and that gets aggregated into something else. And what I will note is I'm replacing those Excel-based tracking tools with Power Automate now, or sorry, Power Apps. So Power Apps is now becoming the next tool that we're migrating away from Excel-based input forms, and we're now building something a little bit more sustainable, I'll call it, in the Power Apps space. So, maybe there's a good connection point here between like maybe goals and Power Apps should be more closely linked, right? Because now I have this ability to like, the Power App can serve the data entry portion a bit more for me, right? And then the goals can update real time, either on reporting that's based off of that Power Apps, or that the goals can reflect instantly what the Power Apps is telling me is going on. So if I, if I need to update those records or update the values, right? Maybe that's where I would want to put that kind of information. So I think there's probably some stronger story around some of the integration of those tools. I mean, I do think that's a good idea. Put goals inside a Power App. I don't know if that'll actually make it worthwhile here. Joe also mentions he's really thinking through this. I think he's got some really good thoughts here. Joe also mentions, well, what about a Power Automate integration? So when we've hit a threshold, when something changes, adding a hook onto the goal that gives us a Power Automate trigger something off of a goal, and let Power Automate handle whatever that other part is, notifying, sending an email,
update a goal.
Something like that. Something. I think that's interesting to me, and I think there's like this idea of like there's data coming into this goals area, and if you think about, I talk about this to companies when we talk about data pipelines, or I think, where do you want to put the sensors? Like, what is the sensor we need to attach to this process? Is the sensor, what is the number of the goal? Is the sensor that the goal changed? Is the sensor, like, you kind of indicate what those are, and then when those sensors trigger or flagged or something happens, that makes sense to me, that to send out information to let people be aware of what's going on. I think those are really solid ideas for this. I'd be curious your reaction on those comments from Joe and Greg. Let's go, Seth. Any thoughts on those things for you?
Yeah, I commented to Greg. I think overall, in terms of cascading goals up and down throughout an organization, like make your data work for you, right?
Yeah.
Like the only reason, and that's where I think data people in general have a better tune of, okay, if I'm going to go spend a bunch of time entering manual data, like how far is that going to
Mhm.
get me
Yeah.
in terms of like how I can report on it, who's going to see, what's the visibility, and if I'm only entering data in this one spot and it's not useful,
Mhm.
or it's not going to grow or build for me, then it's a waste of my time.
Right.
Sure.
So yeah, love that comment, and definitely a book I'll check out. In terms of automating around goals, I mean, the more integration alerting you want to do, that's great. I still think you need to scale it into that cascade of goals to make it more useful than an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Right. If I'm
Agreed.
only managing my team, right? Like what I have an Excel spreadsheet in my SharePoint folder, you know, like,
Yeah.
and they can go add updates, and there's features of obviously tracking,
Sure.
you know, goal like
Mhm.
data across reports and things like that. But when you make the solution harder than the easy solution, and the value of going through those pains isn't there, you're gonna have your challenges with user adoption. Either way, I think
I
goals
like that point.
I am excited about it. I do think it's something that, you know, given some enhancements, you know, could be extremely powerful. I love the fact that it's got the user element to, you know, the dashboard, right? Like it's tied into, like, you have someone who has a specific goal within, you know, a particular report.
Yep.
I think I'd say I'm not really keen on using it for manual goals quite yet, because I don't get enough on the other spectrum of that to manage things within there. But I do think if you have things you can automate and track over time, like sales would be a good one,
Mhm.
Yep.
where there probably is a lot of value
Yep.
in terms of using that right out of the gate.
Call centers would be another
and
good one. Like, you know,
Yeah.
how many tickets we're
where
getting through,
the
like,
volumes are coming
Yeah.
in, and those high level numbers
Yep.
are just, you know,
Important.
updating and tracking across time. Yeah, absolutely.
This also bodes very well with the conversation. I like those points, Seth, because this bodes very well with our other, what KPIs should a BI team be thinking
Right.
about? And you really do have to have those first before you come to this and say, okay, now we can measure them.
Exactly. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to-
And that's
Yeah.
that's what I can't stop thinking about with I think with I think in this perfect digital technical world where you had a Power App and Power Automate that could update the goal and notifications and the
Yep.
tracking, that would all be well and good. But
Oh, I didn't think about
I-
that. That would be cool. Have the Power
What?
App put, like, again, as soon
Yeah.
as you get API level access,
yes,
a Power App that can just update the target, update the goal.
yes, update the target or any service update the target. So
I
to
like
speak,
that.
and notifications. But to me, it starts with I don't know if culture is the right word, but almost like the philosophy or the the methodology around the organization, where
Sure.
if you're going to have a goal, or like let's say for a sales rep that they manage, that's their responsibility, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because I think we're always thinking in terms of like a team goal, but who manages that? We're thinking the report. Well, maybe that's not the case, where it should be that culture change of, hey, this is your marketing number, this is what you own,
Mm-hmm.
so you're responsible for this number, so we assign you to it, and if it's a manual number that you have to update, you have to go to it and you own it.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
then that also goes into like, is there either incentives and actual consequences
Yeah.
of that number?
Sure.
Because just having a scorecard right now, and you said, hey, the sales team is this, is there a consequence to it being behind? Is there a consequence for it not being tracked?
Yes.
Well, it doesn't matter what the feature is if you don't have a company or a team thinking in a certain way.
Mhm.
So I think it has to start there. So I personally think right now in its current iteration, I think it can be used for an organization, maybe not on a global scale, but I think it has at least enough to put some things in there to begin to roll it out. But it's only limited, I think, really more by the methodology change, because everything that I've read about goals has always been like what you can do in it.
Yeah.
But again, it's not necessarily like, how do you actually get people, like, what's the way, how should you structure your goals? Because starts there. Like,
Sounds like a blog, Tommy.
Sounds like I was going to say. So to that exact point.
I don't know what to do yet. I was hoping someone else. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
So to that exact point, Tommy, I'm looking at, like, I'm going through and I'm seeing who's blogging about goals in general. Just looking about what content is out there. There's not a lot. There's not a lot of people chatting about it on the interwebs around goals. So I'm going to challenge Tommy again for his third and fourth and fifth blog post. Maybe
I don't know the answer yet.
Put some thoughts around maybe pose the questions. Start a blog around just posing the questions initially and get some discussion happening around it. Do you find this is useful? Can we get it going? Like, what makes sense here? Because I don't think any one person is going to be able to like knock it out of the park and be like, boom, we've got it all figured out. Goals are like a done thing. I think it's just going to be evolution of ideas and figuring out how does it integrate, how does it incorporate. And I'm going to throw it out there. Could this be one of the Gartner features that we need to add from the Microsoft team? So I think Microsoft definitely designs things for some of the Gartner metrics to make sure that they're in the leader visionary portion of that graph area. This may be a differentiator that other tools that are online don't have at this point. And my gut feel here, and again, this is just Michael getting a feel for what's happening is...
third person.
Here we go. It's third person.
Oh boy.
Because now I'm not liable. So my thought here is someone said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could pluck a data point out of a data model using DAX? So there's a new feature, there's a new API that allows you to run DAX as a you don't need the AMDO library. You can run DAX directly against a model as a query. So it's basically an endpoint. So they basically make the XML endpoint an API endpoint. So you don't need all this extra stuff anymore. So I think my gut feel here is someone said, hey, why don't we just make an API call where you submit a DAX query directly to a data model and a data point returns out. And someone else said, ooh, that's a good idea, but where do we use it? And they're like, well, we can make this thing called goals that will allow us to do this. So we can go to think of it. I can go to a report. I can click a data point. That data point has a query that I can listen to. I know what that query is, and I can copy that query out and put it in another part of the application. No AMO, no other libraries. I can literally write just the DAX statement and hit the endpoint or the API and get data out. My feeling is someone made that feature and they said, well, we got to figure out how to use that API somewhere. And someone else came up with an idea. It's like, hey, goals could be a good idea. We could pick out these individual feature things and pick at data points across any model anywhere and centralize them. So my gut feel is it's something along those lines where there was a new API or new feature added and they're like, how are we going to use it? Oh, let's make goals.
I would love to see the roadmap because I know they have the Power Platform release wave.
Yeah.
I think there's like one or two things on goals, and I think one of them is the goal visual in Power BI, but I don't know if there's anything else. I would love to see if there is a roadmap for what the long-term plan is. But
that's a good question. I don't think I've seen that either. Yeah.
I like where they are going with that. I have there's a lot of good thoughts there on like, you could create a goal from an API. Yeah. There's a lot there.
I'm going to put I'm going to chat the blog post. So this is the blog post from our favorite guy, our developer, Kai Uncroth. I think is how you say the name. Sorry, Kai, I butchered your name again.
You nailed it, Mike.
I did? Okay.
Yep.
Always. So Kai's talking about this exact API. This is in August. In August, this shows up, announcing the public preview of the Power BI REST API. Send a query in, get data out kind of thing. So you'll authenticate, and then you're able to run data directly against your data model, which I think is absolutely super cool and very, very interesting. So that's where I think this feature came from. Here is the API.
Hey, and that all sounds great, but just like we have end users that don't care about the complexity of our solutions.
That's true.
We are end users ourselves.
Yes.
True statement. Well, I think this is probably a good ending point for the podcast today. So thank you all for listening. We appreciate you guys participating. For those of you who have been online, either on LinkedIn or YouTube, thank you very much for your comments. They're very relevant and super engaging. So thank you all very much. Appreciate your time. Our only request is, if you like this podcast, if you had fun with this, if you got a couple laughs out of it, or it caused you to think, or I never knew that before, or I learned something new here. Please just go out and share this with one other person that you think might like to hear about the podcast. And that's all all our request is. And with that, Tommy, if you're watching or if you're listening, where can you find the podcast?
You broke my rhythm. You already just said it. So if you're watching the podcast, you can listen to it on any podcast platform. Subscribe on Apple and Spotify. Episodes are released audio every Tuesday and Thursday. If you're listening right now, you can watch it live Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7:30 a.m. Central. You can, if you want to get notified for new episodes, go to the Power BI Tips YouTube channel or Power BI Tips LinkedIn. We'll have the episodes posted for the future and the schedule, so you get notified just in case you don't wake up in time and
Like
you want to
me.
wake up early. Yeah, if you want to wake, all right. If you want to wake up early enough, so you know when the episodes are coming out.
Awesome. Well, thank you all very much. It was a great discussion. Happy working with goals, and we'll see you guys on Thursday. Thank you all very much.